Hi, welcome to another episode of African Biographics. A colossal dam is near completion on Ethiopia's stretch of the Nile, a project so large that it promises to set the country on a path to industrialization that could lift tens of millions of people out of poverty. Downstream in Egypt, where the Nile meets the sea, the story is different. For the Egyptians, the dam is a giant menacing barrier that could be used to hold back the source of nearly all the country's water. Egypt depends on the Nile to secure 95% of the water needed for different purposes such as drinking, household use, agriculture, water transportation, tourism, electricity generation, and industry. Ethiopians see building the dam as a fundamental right, one that could bring electricity to more than half of Ethiopians who don't have access. On the other hand, Egyptians see their fate potentially falling into foreign hands. In this video, we take a look at this grand project by Ethiopia and why Egypt sees it as a threat to its livelihood. I know I'm a bit late to the party on this one, but hopefully this video will bring value to you. The majestic and breathtaking Nile River is one of the few rivers in the world that are known to flow from the south to the north. The Nile itself has two separate sources, the White Nile, which originates from Equatorial Africa, and the Blue Nile from Ethiopia. 86% of the Nile originates in the highlands of Ethiopia and flows into the Blue Nile. In light of the untapped potential that Ethiopia can realize in terms of hydroelectric power from the Nile, the government of Ethiopia is currently constructing the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Once complete, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam would be the largest hydropower facility in Africa with a capacity to generate 6,000 megawatts of power, nearly triple the country's current electricity generation capacity. In 2016, about 30% of Ethiopia's population had access to electricity, and more than 90% of households continued to rely on traditional fuels for cooking. Traditional fuels can cause respiratory infections according to the World Health Organization, of which acute lower respiratory infection is the leading cause of death in Ethiopia. Ethiopia's lack of electricity contributes to an economic lag that in turn has left the country in an immensely precarious situation. Without industry, hundreds of thousands have fled endemic poverty. At the same time, girls in rural areas of Ethiopia, where more than 80% of the country lives, are expected to fetch firewood for cooking, precluding millions from going to school. So the benefits of better access to electricity in Ethiopia are clear. The government of Ethiopia also anticipates a boost to revenues through electricity exports from the dam. Several power purchase agreements have already been signed with neighboring countries including Djibouti, Kenya, Rwanda, Sudan, and Tanzania. So as you can see, the benefits of this project for Ethiopia and many of its electricity importing neighbors in East Africa are clear. However, the downstream countries like Egypt and Sudan feel that the implications of this project aren't all positive, and we will explore this here. The country of Egypt depends on the Nile to secure 95% of water needed for different purposes. In addition, nearly all of Egypt's population live along the Nile and is entirely dependent upon it. Accordingly, the ancient Egyptians considered the Nile to be the source of all life and important to the lives of the gods. The river even eventually became known as the physical manifestation of the god Hapi and the goddess Ma'at themselves. So the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam will create a huge reservoir in Ethiopia once the project is complete. However, whatever Ethiopia gains from the Nile, Egypt loses. This explains why Egypt sees this project as an existential threat. When Ethiopia first declared its plans to build the Grand Renaissance Dam in 2011, both Egypt and Sudan responded with total rejection. Egypt called for the establishment of a committee to review the dam and the collateral damage that the dam would have on downstream nations. Egyptian officials in the Ministry of Irrigation claimed that Egypt would lose between 20% to 30% of its share of the Nile waters. Ethiopia's Prime Minister at the time, however, gave assurance to Egypt that they would ensure the dam would not disadvantage Egypt in any way.
Construction will cause no significant harm to the people of our three countries, and specifically to the people of Egypt.
Historically, Egypt has been able to maintain control of their water security. This was through the agreements it struck in 1929 and 1959. In 1929, an agreement was concluded between Egypt and Great Britain regarding the utilization of the waters of the Nile River. Britain was supposedly representing its colonies in the Nile River basin. This Anglo-Egyptian treaty covered many issues related to the Nile River and its tributaries. Of particular relevance to the present discussion is that it granted Egypt an annual water allocation of 48 billion cubic meters and Sudan 4 billion cubic meters out of an estimated annual yield of 84 billion cubic meters of water. In addition, the 1929 agreement granted Egypt veto power over construction projects on the Nile River or any of its tributaries in an effort to minimize any interference with the flow of the water into the Nile. 1959 would see Egypt and an independent Sudan sign a bilateral agreement which effectively reinforced the provisions of the 1929 Anglo-Egyptian Treaty. This agreement increased water allocations to both Egypt and Sudan. Egypt's water allocation was raised from 48 billion cubic meters to 55.5 billion cubic meters and Sudan's from 4 billion cubic meters to 18.5 billion cubic meters, leaving 10 billion cubic meters to account for seepage and evaporation. Finally, the agreement stipulated that in the case of an increase in average water yield, the increased yield would be shared equally between the two downstream states, Egypt and Sudan. This explains why both Egypt and Sudan feel aggrieved by the construction of the dam. The 1959 agreement, like the 1929 Anglo-Egyptian Treaty, did not make allowance for the water needs of other countries, including even Ethiopia, whose highlands supply more than 86% of the water that flows into the Nile River. Egypt has insisted that the water rights it acquired in 1929 and 1959 be honored and that no construction project be undertaken on the Nile River or any of its tributaries without prior approval from Cairo. However, the countries that are upstream, such as Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda and Ethiopia, have argued that they are not bound by these agreements because they were never parties to them. I mentioned earlier that Sudan initially opposed to the dam's construction, but now the country has recently warmed to the idea. This could be because Sudan has agreed to purchase electricity from the dam, while it has also agreed with Ethiopia to collaborate on a free economic zone. Sudan hopes that the dam will help regulate flooding in the country, which has been an issue recently, but it has also warned that millions of lives would be at risk if Ethiopia unilaterally fills the dam. You can understand Egypt's concerns because even without the dam, many of the Nile Delta's irrigation canals are running dry. A multitude of factors including climate change, poor maintenance, mismanagement and illegal water siphoning have dehydrated the already thirsty country. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization says that temperatures in some parts of Egypt are expected to rise between 1.8 and 3.6 degrees Celsius over the next century, requiring more water to grow crops as evaporation in the Nile and its canals increases. Further water shortages and their effect on agriculture could have dire consequences for Egypt's 100 million people, a population that now grows by more than 2 million people per year. In the past 50 years, Egypt's population rose from 35 million to 100 million. This explains why Egypt has been piling pressure on Ethiopia for the countries alongside Sudan to reach an agreement when it comes to the construction and the launching of the dam. And as you'd expect, given the circumstances, of course Egypt is lobbying for a deal where it gets as much water as it can. Initially, the parties involved signed in 2015 a deal known as the KHARTOUM Agreement, which was supposed to map out a way forward, but implementation of the deal hasn't been easy. Egypt, Ethiopia, as well as Sudan would try in vain for years to come to forge a deal on how quickly the dam's reservoir would be filled. Egypt, anticipating drought, has demanded that the dam be filled slowly over more than a decade. Ethiopia, which built the dam largely with its own money, wants the reservoir full and generating the maximum electricity as soon as the dam is complete, which is scheduled now for 2023. In the current negotiations, Ethiopia believes that the case of the Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam and that of the broader Nile water sharing are two different issues and must be addressed separately. For now, Ethiopia wants the negotiation to focus on issues relating to the filling of the dam and strongly believes that the broader water sharing agreement can only be negotiated by including other countries such that an agreement that binds all of the countries involved is secured. Egypt and Sudan, however, are not willing to look at these two issues differently, and they seem not to be interested in the involvement of other upstream countries along the river. The Ethiopian government expects that it would take roughly 5 to 6 years to fill the reservoir. However, Egypt's Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation believes that the period of 12 to 18 years is needed to guarantee water security for Egypt. This is quite a discrepancy with the 5 years that Ethiopia has stated. Hence why it is understandable that the countries have reached a stalemate. Recently, tensions among Egypt, Sudan and Ethiopia over the dam on the Nile have escalated. This was particularly after Ethiopia announced that it had started filling the reservoir, an action contrary to Egypt's mandates that the dam not be filled without a legally binding agreement over the equitable allocation of the Nile's waters. In July of 2020, Addis Ababa declared that it reached its first year target of filling the mega dam's reservoir, which can hold 74 billion cubic meters of water. Egypt has escalated its call to the international community to get involved. Donald Trump's administration in the United States even threatened to withhold development aid to Ethiopia if the conflict was not resolved and agreements reached. Donald Trump would even suggest that Egypt will blow up the dam if there's no agreement reached.
Because Egypt is not going to be able to live that way. And they'll end up blowing up the dam. And I said it and I say it loud and clear. They'll blow up that dam and they have to do something. Because they could have stopped it. They should have stopped it long before it was started.
On a positive note, most recently, Sudan, Egypt and Ethiopia have resumed their talks over the controversial dam. These negotiations included water ministers from the three countries, as well as representatives from the African Union, the European Union and the World Bank. Hopefully these countries will come to an agreement very soon. The colossal Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is now 75% completed, according to the Ethiopian government reports. The first phase of the water filling process was completed recently and the dam now contains 4.9 billion cubic meters of water. With or without an agreement, the dam is an imminent reality and the people in Egypt, Sudan and Ethiopia are preparing for what it may bring. Let me know in the comment section below what you think the resolution amongst the three countries, Egypt, Ethiopia and Sudan should be. Also don't forget to like and share the video if you enjoyed it. Also, if you're new here, don't be shy to subscribe and to click the notifications bell so that you don't miss out on any new uploads. Thank you all for tuning in. This has been Tatenda for African Biographics. Until next time, cheers. Have a good one.